Some things in life matter aside from being happy, even matter more. One of those things is who we are, and a large part of who we are is our character. Character is a normatively thick term and one that helps us make judgments about ourselves and others. If someone has character, we take that to be a good thing, while lacking character is bad. We widely understand and describe ourselves and each other in terms of our character traits. We say of people, for example, that they are brave or cowardly, foolish or wise, strong or weak, envious or self assured, masculine or feminine, brutal or kind, and so forth. But what is character? What does it mean for someone to have it? Can someone have it? How is character possible? What is the value of character? Is it intrinsically valuable, or is it merely of instrumental use? And why, if at all, does it matter? And if so, to what extent? There are two obvious errors, both extreme, which we might make concerning what character is and when someone has it. We often attribute a character trait to a person after just a handful of experiences with them. If someone has been honest with us a few times, we're likely to think they are of honest character. I take this to be an obvious error. If we suppose that same person had 100 times in which they were honest, and yet were only doing so when speaking with you 3 times, and so lied every other 97 times, that person does not seem like an honest person at all. On the other side, it seems too strong a claim to suggest for a person to be honest, they must be honest at all times, such that they never lie. Though it might seem contradictory, an honest person still might lie. If they were honest 97 times but lied 3 times, we wouldn't say they weren't honest. Our observation here tells us something about the nature of character. To have a character trait is to have a long-term or relatively long-term stable and broad-based disposition to act in a distinctive way, namely, to use the relevant skills in the relevant ways at the relevant sorts of times to perform the relevant action. Another way of putting it is this. Character should be the determining factor in the causation of the relevant behavior, actions, pro-attitudes, emotions, thoughts, and so forth, and should be so over an extended time period and cross-situationally. We can thus describe character as robust. Character, then, appears to have 3 dimensions: cross-situational, temporal, and internality. The cross-situational dimension tracks the variety and kinds of situations or circumstances in which the purported character trait happens. The temporal dimension tracks the time slices in which the purported character trait is said to occur, and the internality dimension tracks what the source of the action or behavior is. Given character should be the determining factor, the cause of the associated character trait should be the character trait itself, and not external factors, such as social norms, peer pressure, the weather, custom, tradition, upbringing, and so forth. Given character is so robust, to have a character trait requires scoring high along all 3 of the identified dimensions. Scoring high on all 3 is jointly necessary and sufficient for character. For the sake of clarity, consider the character trait of honesty. For someone to be honest, it would require them to display honesty at those times and in those situations in which honesty is relevant. For example, suppose someone found a wallet on the ground, picked it up, and then had someone ask if they'd found their lost wallet. Intuitively, it would be honest to reply with a yes and to return the lost wallet to its owner. All things being equal, that seems to be what an honest person would do. But returning wallets is only one situation of many. If a person only returned wallets but not keys or phones, or wasn't honest about wallets but was honest about what they ate for breakfast, we'd be less likely to describe that person as honest because their honesty scores low on the cross-situational dimension. Suppose they were honest about the wallet, but were only so dependent upon the day, or the gender of the person who lost the wallet, or weather, or period of their life, and so on. In this case, they score poorly on the temporal dimension. A third dimension requires the source of the relevant action to be the character trait itself, which is internal to the person. If someone were honest because they were in a good mood, or the weather was nice, or because of social norms, then that wouldn't count towards a higher score along the dimension of internality because the source of the seemingly honest behavior stands external to the person in question. Our understanding of character presents us with a difficult question as to when someone can be rightly described as having this character trait or another. We've already seen that attributing someone a character trait when they've only performed the action a handful of times, or only under certain circumstances, or only due to the external factors is a mistake, and likewise that if they fail to perform the relevant action at all times, to be mistaken too. We might be tempted to think then that the answer lies somewhere in the middle, a golden mean between two extremes. But that doesn't seem right either. If a person only acts in the relevant sorts of ways half the time, in half the relevant situations, and is only internally motivated half of those times, we'd still be apprehensive about attributing them the relevant character trait. We might describe a person who performs the relevant actions half the time as kind of or sort of honest, but it seems obviously wrong to say that they are honest if the odds of them being so has a statistical probability of a coin flip. It is highly unlikely we will ever find this precise line as to when someone is not honest and when they are, where the threshold of having a character trait is. This issue is multiplied by the fact that character is also multidimensional. There is more to character than just one trait, and so while acting a certain way might conform to one trait, that doesn't mean that they will because of other character traits might be, rightfully, pulling them in a different direction. So I'm left with giving a thoroughly dissatisfying answer. The threshold is somewhere around the point in which someone scores highly along all three dimensions. Our attribution of character might give us the impression that character is binary. You either have a character trait or you don't. This is particularly the case given we think character is a robust concept, in essence, scores highly on the various dimensions which are its necessary and sufficient conditions. But given we've identified character as having various dimensions, all of which are on a spectrum, it seems right to also think that character itself is a spectrum too. Someone can be somewhat, or kind of, or very honest, or brave, or cowardly, or miserly, and so on. Character admits of degrees, and we seem aware of this too. Character doesn't just do the work of describing what people are like. Character also does the work of both explaining and predicting actions and behaviors. When we describe someone as being honest or happy or a cruel person, those attributions are supposed to both explain why they have behaved as they did in the past, but also predict what they'll do in the future. Why did that person harm other people? Because they are cruel. How will this person act in cruel, relevant situations? Well, they will act cruelly. Character as a predictor is both popular and highly problematic for two reasons, with the second one resulting from the first. The first problem is that we often misattribute character to people who don't actually have it. As we've meditated, a character trait is robust and therefore requires substantive examples of it before we can even begin to tentatively attribute that particular character trait to that person. We might often describe someone as honest or charitable or evil and so on when they aren't honest or charitable or evil at all. They may sometimes act honestly or charitably or poorly, but as we've noted, acting a certain way isn't sufficient for that person to be honest or charitable or evil. And the second problem, which follows from the first, is that we misattribute character, we stop seeing the person as they are, and start seeing them through the lens of the character trait we've attributed to them. We stop seeing a person and see only a human vessel for containing character traits. In this way, character traits begin to function like stereotypes, explaining and predicting the behavior of an individual by way of character traits associated to some feature or aspect of their identity. When character becomes attached to us via stereotypes, character traits become essential to the type of person we are. Character trait of a man is A, for the woman it's B, for the white it's X, for the black it's Y, for the Asian it's Z, and so on. Notably though, the character trait gets treated as being essential to the stereotype even when the stereotype is not essential to the person. One's race or gender or sex might be essential to them, but their political association, profession, and interests and so forth are not. Yet even then, we're quick to attribute essential character traits to the conservative, or the progressive, or the libertarian, or the Marxist, and so forth, even when the person who identifies as such could change, or has changed, or will change their political views. When a character trait is assigned to someone, that trait gives us a reason to treat that person in a particular way or another. If a person is an evil person, cruel, malicious, cowardly, and so on, that gives us reason to treat them in certain sorts of ways. Obviously, I think, if those character traits are misattributed, whether to a person or to the feature of their identity, whether essential or not, is incredibly unjust. This is part of the explanation as to why stereotyping is a morally bad thing to do in the first place. What lesson are we to draw from these observations? One lesson some have drawn is that character does not exist. In other words, there are no character traits, no long-term stable cross-situational dispositions which serve as internal determinants for one's actions, behaviours, thoughts, and so forth. There are only, according to this view, situations. For these situationists, there are only the circumstances, individuals converge on a set of actions which is largely dependent upon particular external facts about the situation in question. There are several widely cited and highly unethical psychological experiments which are pointed to in support of these claims. One such experiment was one on obedience and authority by Stanley Milgram. In that experiment, Milgram deceived unsuspecting test subjects into asking a set of questions to an unseen confederate of the experiment who, if that confederate gave the wrong answer, the unsuspecting test subject was to administer an electrical shock of an ever increasing voltage. All the while, another confederate of the experiment, dressed in a lab suit, would encourage the test subject to administer the shock. If people had character, such as cruel, just, fair, empathy, uprightness, and so on, we would expect a variety of times and places in which the test subjects chose to stop administering these shocks. This is not what happened. Out of the 40 subjects, all 40 went past the expected stopping point of 150 volts. 5 stopped at 300 volts. 4 stopped at 315 volts. 1 stopped at 345 volts. 1 stopped at 360 volts, while all remaining 29 subjects continued all the way to the maximum 450 volts. What explains these results? Can it be the case that every single participant in this experiment had the exact same character defect? Were they all weak-willed or evil or cowardly or whatever? Really the right way to explain it? Better explanation, so the thought goes, is that situational factors are better predictors of behavior than character. With regards to Milgram's experiment, the mere presence of a perceived authority figure is enough to cause people to behave in accordance with the authority's will. It's more useful and accurate to hold that people act in certain ways, not because of their internal character, but rather external features of the situation, such as the expectations of others, the weather, social pressure, and norms, and so on. By using an incorrect understanding of psychology, we do more harm than good to ourselves and others. This situationist view, however, is completely compatible with the understanding of character we've sketched out here. First, it is possible that everyone has roughly the same character traits or lack thereof in a society, especially if they haven't spent much time or any time in developing their character. Second, character traits are not things which operate in isolation. A person isn't the summation of a single character trait. We ourselves are multidimensional, having many different thoughts and feelings and experiencing different situations and circumstances, all requiring different responses depending upon what's at stake and what's relevant. A person may be honest, though not act honestly in a particular situation, because there are other features of the situation in which being honest is not as relevant as other things, such as kindness. When a partner asks if an outfit makes them look good, though it's clear there is an honest answer to that question, what's at stake might not be giving an honest reply, but, instead, a kind or encouraging one. Many people do not have character as we've understood it here. Most people aren't honest, or caring, or charitable, or cowardly, or greedy, or dishonest, and so on. The vast majority of us have the mere beginnings, or the raw material of character, or at best have developed it haphazardly due to our life experiences. This raises the question as to how someone could come to have character. What can we do, if anything, to have it? One answer I suggest is through practice, patience, guidance, education, and discipline. To establish character, one needs to repeatedly exercise actions and activities corresponding to the relevant character trait until said trait becomes a part of who that person is. Character, Aristotle noted, is a skill, and skills take time and effort to develop and achieve. Character, on this view, is no different from any other skill. Just as the athlete trains so she can naturally run or swim in a way that is alien to most of us, so too is character an excellence that a person embodies through involvement in certain relevant activities. The importance of character development and education is something we have by and large ignored or overlooked in our current societies. Character building is equivalent to learning an instrument, or a sport, or art form, or any other activity one can name. If you've had any experience in learning any of these, whether you have failed or succeeded, you'll know mastery of a skill requires attentiveness, willpower, practice, patience, attention to detail, coaching, training, and dedication. Behaviors which often seem natural or intuitive to us prior to mastering a skill are often counterproductive in building up the skills required. Skill building is by and large a revisionist activity, meaning it often requires us to revise old or bad or natural behaviors to form better or more conducive ones to achieve our goals. But to truly develop a skill such as a character trait, one must practice it under different circumstances. In our meditation on character, we have noted that people can have character, though it is difficult to know when to attribute it to them, and it is difficult to consciously develop. Most of our character is not purposefully developed by us, but merely the product of situational and social influences. Misattributing character is common, dangerous, and unfair as it often fails to see the person as a person, but instead as merely as an object with essential traits they can't shake off. If we are to have a robust character, to think, act, and feel in the relevant ways, at the relevant times, and the relevant circumstances, and done so for the internal relevant reasons, it requires significant work and dedication by us, no different from developing any other skill. We have spent some effort working out what character is, how it works, when one has it, and how one comes by it. One question which has eluded us, however, is connected to how we started this meditation in the beginning. Why does character matter? Why does it matter who we are? Some of our answers to other questions can begin to answer this one. First, as we've noted, character plays an explanatory and predictive role. Knowing how things happen and why is helpful for making decisions about the future. Identifying character is supposed to give us a way of navigating the world, who to trust, who to distance ourselves from, and so on. Second, character helps us achieve our own ends. When we set an end for ourselves, cultivating character which contributes to achieving that end is extremely helpful. And third, having a certain sort of character works as social proof and helps accumulate social capital. When we're identified as being honest or charitable or confident, that gives us influence in our social lives. These reasons, however, are merely instrumental. They only tell us that character matters insofar as it achieves some other end. If we could get things without character, if we could achieve our ends or gain social capital without it, then what value would character have? It seems our answer should be that character is not just instrumentally valuable, but intrinsically valuable too. Character is one thing which truly matters. That character is intrinsically valuable seems both intuitive, part of our collective wisdom, and a consequence of our reasoning thus far. Virtue, it is said, is its own reward. And additionally, in our previous meditation on happiness, we found that our goal is not just to experience happy moments, but rather being a happy person, to have the character trait of happiness. Perhaps there's a way forward by reconsidering happiness as a way of life. In the meditation on happiness, we concluded that happiness is one of many things which truly mattered, and one way of engaging with happiness is by making it a way of life, to become a happy person, to have the virtue or character of happiness. When we develop a character trait, we come to embody that value. A character trait or virtue can be more than merely a part of who we are, but also who we are when taken as a totality. Embodying a value is the full incorporation of that value into your very being. Embodying a value is what it means to have character. We take what is intrinsically valuable and knit it into the very fabric of our being. Character then becomes intrinsically valuable because there is no other way to embody a value but through it, as our reflections upon happiness have shown us. Developing character, like happiness, honesty, charity, empathy, bravery, and so forth, is the activity of embedding it into ourselves. One problem which arises from this view is by way of considering one of Robert Nozick's thought experiments. Suppose there were a transformation machine which could transform you into any sort of person you desired, with that change being consistent with you still being you. If you want to be honest or charitable or brave or strong, you can just jump into the machine, program it, and you'll become honest, charitable, or brave or strong. Would you or should you hop into such a machine, pre-programming your character and personality? One reason we develop character is to overcome hurdles and challenges. We work hard to become a wonderful pianist, or guitarist, or dancer, or whatever it might be, such that we have mastery over it and are able to reach for higher peaks of excellence. But with the transformation machine, you could just become whoever you wanted to be at the press of a button. Would there be anything wrong with using the transformation machine? Perhaps using it once for a specific reason would be acceptable. Maybe it would be good to use it to be the person you've always wanted to be, attractive, smart, athletic, funny, ethical, and so on. But something does seem a little wrong about it. Using the transformation machine seems like cheating. Using the transformation machine seems to almost show that one seriously lacks character. If we were limited to using the transformation machine just once, that seems acceptable. Even so, there would still be challenges. There will always be new problems and difficulties to overcome. In this case, the person who uses the transformation machine once still needs to develop their character. But what if you had an unlimited use of the transformation machine? Any challenge could be solved by merely jumping back into the machine to make yourself the sort of person for whom the previous challenge now is trivial for. Would we then be using the transformation machine for every single challenge which arrived? Would it be permissible to do so? The answer, for me at least, is while it might be permissible, it hardly seems like the right thing to do. It's not only that using the transformation machine would be a kind of cheating, taking shortcuts to get where we want, but it points towards something more fundamental. Having character, articulating it, developing it, failing and overcoming, cultivating and realizing, all of it requires an active and robust engagement in life and living it. The transformation machine, like the experience machine before, comes between ourselves and us living our own lives. Instead, by using these machines, the machine lives our lives for us. We're merely along for the ride, a passive observer and participant. Character cannot be given to us. It must be cultivated and created by us. It must be a way of life. Character requires an active engagement with life by living it in a purposeful way, to take oneself and one's life seriously enough to shape both in a direction that one autonomously has chosen to. Yet, how does one decide which character traits to cultivate? How do we determine what we want our character to be? Broadly, there seems to be two thoughts on the matter. The first is Aristotle's, that since what people's function is to live, then there must be some way of living well, and to live a good life and to be a good person. For Aristotle, to be a good person was just to say that one was functioning correctly, and he thought we could identify what proper functioning was in the same way we can identify it for other objects, organic entities, or skills. As such, we can determine and identify which character traits to cultivate by reflecting upon our function. An alternative view, one I am more sympathetic towards, is that individuals determine for themselves what character traits to cultivate, and do so by using their rational capacities to decide which traits they ought to develop in conjunction with the sort of life they have rationally decided they want to live. In doing so, a person may have character they self-determine based upon what is meaningful to them and what they believe themselves to have good reason to desire. The character they autonomously choose to develop for themselves combines with their self-determined life goals into an organic unity that, I think, makes them more real than they otherwise would have been had they developed character due to external factors, such as what their purported function is, what their expected social role might be.